from the standpoint of community organizing and, becoming a more cohesive sort of fabric of a community, I feel like we could go into that to some depth and give people a sense of how can it happen? How can it happen with neighbors? Like we spoke about, if you had a neighbor who doesn't take care of their land and you do, or their home and you do, then, doesn't really matter when it comes down to it, there you'll be, But if we actually, as a precursor, really become related with our neighbors, then that certainly can make a big difference. And then, because my whole thing is that we're the artists of our lives, which I consider this is a conversation with you, because we're demonstrating something here about how you came into your own stride and all. I find in community, if people were encouraged to be their creator selves, they could step in different places, but sometimes we too generally do that, and then the people, they get in a kind of a momentary groove because their friend was doing this and now they are. But so let's look at what can make a difference, what kind of components do make a difference in terms of tending to the fire, in a good way from a community standpoint.
Well, from a community, it's kind of like we all do have to kind of work together with that, and that kind of became really apparent when we saw that up at Paradise. Over 15,000 homes almost burned down over 12 hours.
Okay.
And the only homes that the reports I've been getting back, that survive are ones that were the newer homes that were built, after 2008, had the new building codes. But because it was sort of not this new development, it was infill into existing communities where people were kind of placing houses, different areas. It's just they got completely overwhelmed. A lot of them did. And even if they were built after 2008 with the new building codes, they still they couldn't take this enormous pressure with so much stuff burning at one time. Other communities, though, that if we can get in there and we can design them from the very beginning, we've seen over and over that this can be effective. It's like where one property is helping protect the next property, that's helping to protect the next property. But all it takes is one weak link, and then we have one house that starts to ignite, and it starts to ignite another house and the next house. And so building from scratch is so much easier and better. Certainly there's so many ways that we can come through and we can try to retrofit and make existing problems better. But from a community standpoint, it's these newer communities that are going in. These are what's really going to help California, I think. But, there's trade-offs with that too. The more you build, there is, the environmental pressure that's there. Lands and people, building their houses in areas that might be great for agriculture. So any type of decision you make, there's going to be people that win and people that lose. Well, at least aspects,
Sure, well, trade-offs.
Yeah, the trade-offs,
trying to make it be the best case scenario for all. Ask the question. So you're consulting presently with a community down in North County, San Diego, that's a high hazard area, and taking these considerations into play. And certainly a possibility with them, or really in almost any scenario, is that there be models, what I would call art of living models, that demonstrate the how-to of the process, what people are taking into account, what can make it work, so that we're not all having to recreate the wheel here, there, and everywhere, and we can take that energy and reappropriate to some really great things coming of it. So tell me how that works. How do you work as a consultant and with the people in practical terms?
Well, one of the projects I'm working with right now is there is a new development that's been proposed, but many people are coming out and opposing it because it is in a very high fire hazard area that the state has said that, the potential for wildfires moving through here, it's a strong potential. It's going to be a large, high-intensity wildfire. But hazard is different than risk. And so this community is going to be built in such a way that even if there's this hazard there, the risk, I see it, is actually going to be very low of the homes being ignited and people being injured. In fact, just the way that they've already, before they've built one foundation at all, I was there just yesterday, and it's interesting. A lot of people are saying we don't want people building here because it's going to put other people at risk. And I was looking on both sides of the highway, one where they're going to have the new development and then where the existing was. And, the people that are in the existing homes, I'm thinking the best place they could possibly be is in the new development, but just because it'd be a sort of a safe refuge area for them.
So what considerations are going into that? That is a certain amount of space around the homes, what they're building, the materials they're building with, what are...
Well, it's all sorts of different scales that they're being looked at, and so around the community themselves, they're building 100 feet of irrigated landscaping with plants specifically designed so that they're not very flammable, and then it's going to be irrigated, so it's got lots of moisture that's there. So after 100 feet, you then move into the actual houses into the community. They're built with new fire codes and building codes that's going to be very ignition resistant. The landscaping, they're going to come through, and they're at the actual home sites. They're going to start it from scratch, where after the home's in, they're going to put in landscaping that is considered to be very resistant to ignition, and it's going to be safe for the houses. And then they're also, looking at ways, trying to develop the road network that would be able to facilitate people to get out quickly as possible to evacuate. But if they can't, the community is going to be designed in such a way that if you can't get out, stay in the community. There's places specifically designed to be a temporary refuge area. I'm not saying it would be the most comfortable place, during a wildfire, but it would certainly be a safe place for a while, because so many people that die, they're dying during the evacuation, and just human nature is just like, well, I'm just going to see how bad it's going to get. And if you wait for that, you just can't understand until you've been around it. And in fact, the first time I was around with a wildfire, it was burning on both sides of the roads. It was the middle of the day, and it was pitch, as black as pitch, and just embers are flying everywhere. And we're driving, and there's like logs that are rolling down the hill. We're, dodging this sort of thing. And so, and I have experience with this and feel semi kind of comfortable. But you've got someone that's never seen this before. I mean, it's an absolute terror. And so trying to develop ways so that people could be able to, not get out, not have to get out, under those circumstances, develop places within the communities like, we're going to be here and you're going to be safe here.
Wow. That makes perfect sense. The closest I came to evacuation and all of that was I've been on the road, as you know, for 7 years, 200 homes, 6 states, and so I've been in many communities and gotten to be up close and various different things that people are dealing with, and I was being hosted in Topanga Canyon, and Topanga has like one lane in each direction. Man,
it's a scary place.
It's a scary place. And we were on voluntary evacuation. The majority of the canyon was on mandatory. And what I learned from it was that the mandatory was really an early, choice that was being enforced, because if it really came down to it, there'd be no way out. I mean, it just would be impossible, because all you need is 10 more cars trying to get down the road, and you're already getting bottlenecks and things, and then you take everybody all at once, and
all it takes is one tree, one power line, one car getting a flat, and you're stuck. And now you've got this giant group of folks that are with fire burning all around you.
Yeah. So wow. I mean, that does sound like the new normal. If unless people just don't live in places like that anymore. I don't know what the solution is when it's that extreme. I know for myself, I lived in parts of Malibu that I am pretty sure have burned. I know some. I have several friends that lost their homes in the recent fire, and I know some people that know as many as 20, and maybe I know that many as well. And I used to live in some of those areas, and I do remember, in terms of living with the elements, that I felt often that there was an imbalance of the elements, that there was more fire energy possibly going on and all. So, we're going to have more people, we're going to be living closer to nature and all, but we can still take steps. And so if we want to get active, like we're here in Los Osos, and we wanted to, as a community, be a model for something, like what if we all tended to this beautiful little town, is it like particular people taking ownership of it and leadership that would make a difference? How have you seen things work in that realm?
Well, there's not a one-size-all approach that works, and it all depends upon the specific community. What's driving them? What's the demographics? What are the values of that local community? And that might vary from subdivision to subdivision, even within a given community. And if you try to do one thing in one subdivision, you've got very different people living just down the block, and it's not going to work. But something we found is like there has to be buy-in from the community. It can't just be the fire service saying you've got to do this, because it's like, well, of course that's what you get paid to do, But I've seen it. What really is effective from a community basis is perhaps not trying to get the whole community on board, but to try to find that one champion in that local community that has the trust and has sort of the personality, to get the message off in a way that their community best understands. People, they come in with their own biases, like, from the fire service, like, you need to do this, this, and this, but it doesn't always play. But if you can get that same message to someone that then take it out to the community, it's almost like a train the trainer. That's where I've seen it been the most effective. And it is this partnership between the community, and the folks that are going to be responding to the event.
I have an awareness of people. I call them, or maybe us, bridge people. So I stayed in a household down in San Diego, and there was a Buddhist teacher who came and who had a property in New York, and he wanted to call in more than like the usual Buddhist devotee people, but have it be something that would touch a larger community. And there's a big retreat center nearby, and he saw, we could hook up with the Omega Institute. We could do something with the Omega Institute. I said, you don't really have to do it with the whole entity. If you can find the bridge people, the people that naturally orient beyond the group to the larger, So since I've been here in Los Osos, I've met people who are the champions, for instance, of the Elfin Forest, which is just down the road from where we're sitting here at your home, and where I live as well. And they're already devotees to the natural preserves and this live close to nature. And, so I wonder if there aren't bridge people in each of these little alcoves, that can create the greater fabric. I just see something fabulous coming for human beings that's beyond where we've been orienting.
Well, I could certainly, see that. In fact, you see that a little bit of play already in that we have this, what we call the County Fire Safe Council. And we purposely take people from all sorts of different viewpoints, whether it's a rancher or an environmental group or, utilities, etc., and from all across the county. And we come together to try to find solutions, and then we equip with money and with people to go out and actually try to help some of these local communities. But within the larger group, we have these focus areas. So we have a Los Osos focus area that is made up by residents that are championing this, and they're taking the message out to the people and saying, hey, look, this is what we're doing. We need your help. We're getting funding for this group. And we're starting to see this, all over the county. It's been incredibly successful just in that approach.
That's cool. I wonder, I live in a household, as you know, of, 3 school-age kids, 9-year-old boy, 13, 15-year-old girls. Sometimes my heart hurts for the state of education today, where I thought it would be almost totally experiential, all about how you learn and you apply it to your life and you get to know how creative you are and you can take it anywhere, so is there anything that could allow like young people to be the champions for the community, or to work it into the school systems or something like that?
Well, it's funny you say that, because I find that children sometimes can be the absolute best champion, where they come in and it's like, mommy, the fireman came today and he said we have to do this, and this, and no, mommy, we've got to do this, and the parents might have just kind of blown off the message, because there's a lot of competing things in everyone's lives, that's there, and so there's a lot of almost like little birds that are cheeping. Which one are we going to feed? But if your own child is cheeping the loudest, and we need to make this happen. I've seen that happen before, and it's been really cool to watch. That you get the kids on board, then they convince the parents, and then we start working around in community. So it's almost this nested kind of community approach, which kind of, it's interesting that the children are leading in a lot of places.
Yeah, more and more. Well, because it's pretty dire. We're living with an immediacy that, unfortunately, human beings tend to need wake-up calls rather than just working it into the, of their lives. So I'm all for that. So for me, I'm just I'm so devoted to having people get access to the process. That's what we're talking about today, because all the good news in the world can inspire, but if we don't actually break down for people what it takes, how they can take steps, what might get in the way, like this young person who's studying with you, looking at the nature of memory and how things fall off, and all. That's really important, because if we don't understand that, we can make a lot of assumptions and think it's just going to keep its own momentum going.